Now, I see a lot of black conservatives talking about how black women and the black family were destroyed because of welfare. But what these goddamn pieces of trash, these black clown conservatives and these white supremacists, what they don't tell you is that welfare wasn't a bad thing. And there was no man policy until the late 50s when they allowed black people to get on it. And even then there was a bunch of roadblocks. Black people really didn't get on it until like the 70s, 60s and 70s in any significant form. See, let me give you a rundown on the New Deal so you can get a better understanding of all this. Back in the 30s, you had a lot of situations going on. You had the Great Depression, which was caused by the machinations of the white supremacist oligarchs. They had just consolidated power by allying with the United States military to take over the government to make it like it is now. The Rockefellers and all that shit did their thing. You had the Ludlow Massacre where they were protesting. You had the Rockefellers used to use the National Guard and the military to take out any kind of competition they didn't like. They used them to take out Native Americans in Oklahoma. They used the military to take out black Americans in Oklahoma. They used them to take out the white scabs, not white scabs, the white protesters in Ludlow, Colorado. All of that was done by the white supremacist oligarchs using the United States military. Now, they don't like me saying this shit, and what they're going to do is say that it's hate speech, pointing out that the white supremacist oligarchs used the military that they became allied with to take over the country, to take out Tulsa, to take out the Native Americans that had that oil, to take out any protesters that were going against their scams because they were ruining these people's lives and taking away their money and their rights. Okay, this is the truth. And so people got fed up. You had the Dust Bowl going on, so a lot of the farmers were suffering. That's when the white supremacists started buying up all that land because they were going to start doing the factory farming. And this is all written down in things, I think they're called the diets or something. I gotta go back and look that up. It's a whole thing. Anyway, these people got pissed off. They got lawyers together, they got activists together, and then you had people in the streets physically handling business, if you know what I'm saying. They were going to these different groups. There was a bunch of different parties that allied. So you'd have the the Communications Party. You had the Social Rights Party. You had the Elderly Party. That's how you got Social Security. All these different parties came together. They came together to form an agenda. And they all supported each other's agenda, and they drafted this plan, and they forced FDR to sign it, because FDR didn't want to sign it, just like that piece of shit Obama didn't want to sign the internet as a utility. But they forced him to by physically handling business, by physically getting in there and making them do what they needed to do. That's how they got welfare. That's how they got Social Security. That's how they got the FCC. So that they could have rights and they could have representation on the internet, on the radio, and on the television. That's how they did it. It wasn't by voting, it wasn't by marching, it wasn't by dancing. You had the legal component, the political component, and the physical component backed by money, grassroots money. That's how they got the shit done. That is how it works. Marching and dancing and voting doesn't fucking work. Civil disobedience, peaceful protests don't work. Getting a permit doesn't fucking work. The whole reason they want you to do that dumb shit is because they don't want your protest to work. That's why if you have a protest and you're doing a march, there's a barricade on each side because they don't want the people to participate. So there's a separation. So it's just a fucking show. You're just some guys walking down the street with signs. Oh, that's interesting. Save the whales. You're not a part of that. It's their thing and you're looking at it. Okay, cool. It's a psychological barrier. I'm sure you can climb right over, but you're not going to. It's a psychological barrier to keep you away so nothing happens. The protest ends and you go home. That's why they had Martin Luther King and the Big Six Clowns hijack the March on Washington. So turn it into a fucking nothing burger. And so the blacks, instead of all those blacks that were there to handle fucking business. To physically handle business. But since they got the mind disease martyr to do it, building up that bullshit narrative, Black Messiah plan. You build up that Black Messiah. He has no idea that they were building up the Black Messiah and that he was the Black Messiah. They weren't going to make Marcus Garvey the Black Messiah because you had the African Legion. I already talked about what the African Legion used to do to the Klan. They don't talk about that. They'll say that's hate speech. They got you thinking this nigga was allied with the Klan. No, he used to delete the Klan. You understand what I'm saying? Guys like Clarence Smith. He used to be African Legion, and he joined the Nation of Informants. He wasn't understanding it was a honeypot group created by the Bureau of Investigation to round up Garvey supporters, aka Black Americans who physically put in the work, for real. He didn't know. He had no fucking idea. And he ended up getting deleted by the Nation of Informants, an organization now run by a federal agent named Lewis Walcott, who calls himself Farrakhan, who's a complete cuck and a finger-waved bitch. We all know what he did with the Million Man March, getting black people's money. Yeah. Took their money, got on stage. Black people were ready. The world was ready to hear what Black American agendas were. And that dirty, finger-waved tether, piece of garbage, he talked about nothing but platitudes and nonsense for hours. He didn't mention reparations once. Why? Because he's a fucking agent and a tether and a nuke. Piece of shit. And fuck his whole organization. They're all a bunch of beanpot nukes. Most of their money comes from government contracts. I ain't lying about none of this shit. Now, let's get back to business. The New Deal got passed. They had with the FHA, so a lot of white people started getting home loans. That started the redlining and all that. Because remember, before all this, in the North, a lot of neighborhoods were integrated. They were already integrated. You had a lot of black Ukrainian neighborhoods. You had a lot of black Jewish neighborhoods. And they really didn't really like Jews, and they didn't like blacks. And now that I've said Jewish, the fucking algorithm's going to be on me. I'm not saying anything bad about Jewish people. So shut the fuck up. Now, you had these mixed neighborhoods, and the white supremacist oligarchs did not like it. White people did not like this. The mainstream white people didn't like this because you need to have black Americans be this other. They need to be an other. They need to be over there doing whatever the fuck they do. They can't be integrated. You can't see them as normal people. They don't like that. That's one of the reasons that they hate Jewish people. Like I said, Jews do their thing. They got things that they do to benefit themselves. But the reason why they hate the Jewish people is even if that guy, I'm talking about the white ones, even if they dislike blacks and they call us shucks and the N-word, and they do, they'll talk to a nigga like a human being. Even when the ADL, which is the white nationalist hate group, tried to set up an innocent black man to save their own people, they were dealing with that man as a human. Just that little thing pisses them off. They fucking hate that so much. They oh my God, you guys don't understand. You have no idea how much they despise that. Just that thing where they'll talk to you like a person. Like I don't like the way they talk to the way a Christian white person will talk to an Asian. A Christian nationalist. That's what a white nationalist is. A white nationalist and a Christian nationalist are one and the same. Hitler was a Christian nationalist. Understand that right now. Get that through your head right now. Hitler was a Christian nationalist. Get that through your goddamn heads. So when they say that, that's what they really mean. Even though we all know that it was Hitler that helped the black Americans and the Mexicans save Ethiopia from the Italians. But we can't go there, guys. We can't go there. It's hate speech pointing out the truth. But I mean, so we're going to leave that alone. But yeah, it pisses off the white supremacists too because it messes up their whole bullshit narrative of their white savior that it's going to free them from the integration because they're getting forced into fucking blacks. We can't resist a black cock. Okay, buddy, whatever you say. Anyway, let's get back on track. So, New Deal's passed. One of the things passed was public assistance for families. Blacks couldn't get on this back in 1932. They couldn't get on it. It was 32, 33, I think, whatever. Back in the 30s, early 30s. Black people couldn't get on this. They also had public housing. Black people couldn't get in that either. Those things weren't allowed to. Those things were not afforded to blacks because they wanted blacks to stay doing their sharecropping and their cheap labor, working in the slaughterhouses, whatever cheap-ass job, porters, whatever. Stay over there. We need that cheap labor. We can't have them getting too comfortable because back then, the down payment on a house was like 32 cents and shit, and the house was like $600. And they knew black Americans, if they were able to get to do what the white people do, and here's what the white people did. They would get on welfare, which is totally fine. I'm not against that. If you're paying taxes, you should be able to get on welfare. And white people just hate when I bring this shit up. They're like, when black people arguing with white people, they'll be like, well, there's more white people on welfare than there are black people on. And I go, you know what? Good. Because they pay taxes, we pay taxes. I love that there's a bunch of black people on welfare. I love that there's a bunch of white people on welfare. We're paying taxes. We might as well get something out of it. And whenever I used to say that on those Facebook groups, they'd block my ass so fucking fast, I'd be out of the argument. All right, that nigga, we can't have that argument. We don't want that nigga's argument. He's blocked. So they would block my ass. So, because these kinds of, that whole frame of mind, they don't like that. Because everything they do is a pivot into racism. Now, with that said, back to the subject. White people would get on welfare. They'd get into public housing. It would be the man and the woman. They'd build the family. They had enough income to do so because of the public assistance on top of their income. This allowed them to build enough wealth to buy a home, to have equity, and have savings. So some of them would build mom and pop shops. You'd have your Italian pizzeria, and your corner store, and your pharmacy, and all that shit. And that's how they have all their shit. That's how they have all the Waltons and all that shit, because they were able to build all that money doing that kind of shit. I ain't lying about none of this. They were able to build equity by doing that. And when they finally allowed blacks to get on welfare in the late 50s, and then even then there was a bunch of barriers. I think it was the 50s or the 40s, I don't remember. But there were a bunch of barriers similar to how they were doing with voting, back when voting mattered. They put in a bunch of barriers. They put in a bunch of barriers to make it to where you couldn't get into it in any significant number. By the time blacks were allowed to get into it at all, they made sure to put in a clause of no man in the house. That rule was put in there to make sure black American families did not build wealth. They could not have a bunch of rank and file families. One or two black Americans that got a good job and moved into a white neighborhood, whatever. But they didn't want to go back to how it was before 1932, where you'd have a neighborhood with black American families here, Ukrainian families there, Jewish families here, Uzbekistan family there. They hated that shit. A Japanese family over here. They didn't want blacks, Japanese, Ukrainians, and Russians living in the same goddamn neighborhood, pulling the resources and the money circulating through that neighborhood. In each community, taking that money and building their own fucking stuff up. Then you got Harlem popping off. You got Jewish town was popping off in like places like Chicago. You had Little Ukraine popping off in the Lower East Side. You had all that money going to these black communities. To these different communities, circulating amongst these mixed neighborhoods. They didn't like that because that would benefit blacks. Even when they talked about Andrew Yang's UBI plan, I would see the comment sections. Yeah, that's all we need. Give that money to those effing N-words. And then blah, 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 blah. The whole thing is to make sure black Americans don't get nothing. And they gave them welfare so that they could break up the goddamn family. Because you got to understand, Unlike my culture where the man is in charge and if the woman doesn't want to listen, we're going to whip that ass. In Black American culture, here's how it's supposed to work. The Black American culture is a partnership because of slavery and a bunch of other factors. That's how you survive here. You can't afford to have the man is in charge and the woman needs to listen. She'll listen as a woman, but they're a partnership. They're going to go out as a family. Like everything they're going to do is together, is always together. Like they did a study on this shit. This is how they used to move. And they needed to break that shit up because that's really hard. If Black Americans were able to get on welfare without that stupid ass stipulation, combine that with their institutions they used to have. Back when blacks had real institutions, hospitals, clinics, all kind of whatever, bus companies. They had all of their own shit. If you took those family units and built that wealth up in the welfare system, in the public housing system, and allowed them to come up, expand those institutions, expand those black parts of town, buy up that property, solidify their gains, and then have that money circulating like it used to circulate, along with their bolito and their lotto and running numbers and fucking, what's that shit, and the heroin and all that. That whole thing would have solidified their community so much that it would have been almost impenetrable. And like that dirty, filthy piece of shit W.E.B. Du Bois said, if you combine that with getting the black intellectual into the black power movement, especially under like the Garvey type people, there would have been no safe haven for the Aryan race in the black community. And that's what it was all about. And that's why they built up the fake messiah, the king dreamer, the deluded dreamer. Then they martyred that man. He didn't know that was coming. He thought he was bigger than the rest, and he was coming up. He got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to spout that stupid-ass dream speech that they wrote for him. He thought he was coming up, man. By the time he realized it was too late, and he got brapped. And the agent, Jesse Jackson, rubbed his blood all over his chest. He didn't know. But then they made his bullshit narrative, they made that garbage the gold standard that blacks live by to this day. So now when you got an innocent black woman in her house calling for help, getting brapped, oh, that's her fault. And it's black people are thinking like they used to think under the African Legion, handling business, high ground attacks, stuff like that. No. They're thinking there's nothing we can do. We need to settle this in the court. That guy needs to step down. I can't believe this. I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris to stop this. Which all of that shit is a fucking fat nothing burger. Just like what happened to Antoine Rose. Floyd. Well, Floyd got a semblance of justice, I guess you could say. But the only reason George Floyd got justice was so that they could drown out the police accountability movement. That was the only reason that George Floyd got any kind of justice. Because around that time, if you're able to even look it up now, you know how YouTube is. If you're able to look it up, around that time there were a lot of people pointing out cops were milking overtime while not really doing anything. They're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there were all these scandals. The NYPD was running cocaine. They were grape juicing young ladies in vans. They were grape juicing ladies of the evening. They were running guns across Long Island. They were doing all this illegal stuff. There was a bunch of police doing this crap because they were getting all this military equipment from Change Boy. Change Boy was giving these guys tons of military equipment from the military wars, from the wars that were going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. And they were taking some of those guns and stuff, and they were giving them to the bikers and trading them, making money on the side. And they were running them all over Long Island, upstate and shit. Yeah, I'm not lying about none of this shit. And so this stuff was coming out, and there was a lot of anti-police protests. There were blacks and whites out here protesting against the cops together for injustice against white people. Like Tempa, Kelly, and all those. There were blacks and whites out there protesting, and the cops were getting pissed and beating them up, knocking out old dudes. And they took the George Floyd situation, and it was a masterpiece in deflection. They took that innocent man who got murdered over a dollar bill, and they flipped that and made it all about him to make everybody resent George Floyd as a proxy for black people. They broke everything up. And they did the same thing with Michael Brown. They did the same thing with Michael Brown and then the Ezell Ford, Omar Brego situation. They did the same thing. You break everybody up. You make everybody have animosity towards each other. Then you break down the movement. You make it about something else. And then you use that as an excuse to give cops more money. Because that piece of shit Jackie Lacey and the cops did the exact same thing with Omar Brego, where you had the Justice for Ezell Ford movement. But they were out protesting for Omar Brego, the Mexican guy, and Ezell Ford, who were both killed by the same set of cops, who with zero oversight because of the burn rights laws that were put in place by Barack Hussein Obama. Because I already broke that down in that Black Lives Matter video. Because whites hate all this. The white supremacists hate all this shit. Because like I said, everything is to pivot into white supremacy. And when you point out the details behind all this shit, you figure out what's really going on. And then it takes away from their bullshit arguments that it's about black responsibility. And I want to make a video about something else I forgot I was going to talk about. But whatever, I'm forgetting shit. Anyway, black American men and women are a partnership. And you need to get back to that because you've lost your way. And that's why you got niggas saying women won't let me lead and this balloon pop shit and there's all this animosity so that you have this rage bait mindset to where black kids are out here saying, I'm talking about young black kids. And I've seen this shit when I was in high school. You got black American kids. These aren't tethers. I don't give a fuck with nobody's. These are young black kids fixing their face to talk about how they don't like black women. That's some warped shit. That's some fucking warped shit. So, I mean, there's fundamental problems in the black community caused by the government. And your vote's not going to fix this. You need to create a solid, organized gun culture. You need to create a partnership between the black American man and the black American woman and build that shit up. And I'm going to make a video on the whole Haitian thing as it pertains to reparations, because that's a whole argument. I saw people talking about, well, black Americans, you know, they're all reparations, but that ain't got nothing to do with Haiti. I don't know why those people are mad, but why don't the Haitians fight for reparations? And you know how I've talked about this a billion times. What happened when Haiti fought for their reparations and who got involved? The United States government, but I'll make a video about that. Another one pretty soon. Yeah, but at the end of the day, they ruined welfare basically. Got blacks on it to ruin the black family. They use black issues against black people. They'll use your own shit against you. They're gonna use this reparation shit against you. Because while you're quote unquote moving the needle and taking time using your vote to get reparations, they're gonna legalize all those immigrants like they did under George Bush back in 2006. It's like you guys just don't remember how this shit happened. It all fucking happened. All those people who had the day without Mexicans and all that shit. Jack and Dandy, they're gonna take that shit. They're gonna legalize all these people and they're gonna use that and they're gonna remind them with all this anti-immigrant vitriol that blacks are talking because they're pissed off because they're losing resources. These immigrants are working against them. The Hispanics are working against them. They're pissed. And they're gonna use that. They're gonna tell them, they're gonna remind the Hispanics, hey, those blacks said this. Remember when the blacks were doing that? Remember when the blacks were saying this? And they're going to galvanize them, wind those toy soldiers up, and march their asses against you. Like I said, the Civil War is going to happen. It ain't going to be this fake-ass left-right paradigm. It's going to be black versus brown. Trust me on that. And then they're going to use the criminal gangs that are coming in from places like Venezuela and Honduras, doing all these crazy-ass schemes, robbing fucking restaurants and laundromats. They're going to use all that to incentivize giving cops immunity on top of all the non-oversight that's allowed via the burn rights laws, thanks to that piece of shit Obama, who was vehemently anti-black, as is this East Indian woman, Kamala Harris, whose father is half white, half Indian, and her mother is a pure Indian, and they raised her as an Indian. She's an Indian. She's an East Indian. She's Punjabi. They got signs in India that take great pride in everything she's done as an East Indian. She has no black. She's an East Indian woman. And she doesn't give a fuck about you. She doesn't like you. She's married to a tribester. She hates your guts. And you guys have no choice between her and that orange chomo that used to kick it with Epstein. Like, these are your options, man. Zio Cook over here, Zio Cook over there. Now I'm saying stuff about him. Sorry. So, I mean, you got a quagmire in your hands. You need to get armed and get ready, because that's your only fucking option. It's your only real option. Every other option is nonsense. Every other option is you avoiding getting messed up. They're going to mess you up no matter what. Get ready. Smile. Nod. Play the game. But eventually, you got to get your fucking hands dirty, because they're going to get theirs when it comes to you. And that's a fact. Bitch.